The moment the Z6 III was launched, some people just jumped in and started talking about how bad the sensor is. It was clear that Nikon wanted to provide us a very fast reading sensor so that we can get 4K 60 full frame and 4K 120, 1080, 240 and that too very sharp. So that the sensor can read in a very small body, very high quality 12-bit NRAW. Some people jumped in and they talked about how Z6 III is compromised. And what was the compromise? Well, the first compromise I talked about was the shadow quality, the lack of dynamic range in both photo and video. I'll talk about video first. This is being shot on the Z6 III. Not in the raw files. This is just H.265 10-bit 420, not even 10-bit 422. Is it good? You can see it for yourself. Here I have a 300-watt light through a 2-layer diffusion. So it's not a lot of light, to be honest, on my face, and I think the exposure is quite good, and I think the edit is not going to be stressful at all. I'm going to just show you examples of what the Z6 III can do in normal ProRes HQ 10-bit 422 and H.265 10-bit 420. Have a look. And some of the files that I showed you was actually before Nikon pushed a firmware update cleaning up the noise performance. Post that, recently the team went out, they shot a few footages, and let me show you some of the stuff that the Nikon Z6 III pulled off, right? Very bright sky, can it recover the color in the sky? So much detail within the shadows, can it recover the beautiful red colors from the shadows? Let's have a look. I think you got to know how to use the camera, and your intention has to be, I want to pull off the shot, I want to pull off the my work in this situation, instead of nitpicking and just trying to figure out what's wrong with the camera. That's the first thing, because what a camera like Z6 III gives you is crazy good quality. Remember, if you use the A7S III, and I've done a full-on video on that, you will see that by the time it reaches ISO 12800 in video, the colors are all mushy, they're all shifted to magenta, and strange things are happening, the details are lost. But Nikon has the next ISO level at 6400. So at 6400, it's really clean. And the beautiful thing about putting the second level ISO at 6400 and the base being 800 is that even at 12,800, it's going to push, it's just pushing one step more. So I know at 12,800, the Nikon Z6 III gives you much cleaner output than any of the Sony cameras. That's why the Z6 III makes so much sense. What's the competition? The C-Log 2 from Canon's R6 II, R5? No, the only competition is Canon's R5 II. How much is that? That's about double the money that you spend for a Z6 III. I mean, and the C-Log 2 is good on the R5 II. I have used it. It's really good. Is it significantly better than the Z6 III's output? It is not. You won't even realize. And the kind of quality the Z6 III gives you, the kind of color the Z6 III gives you, and especially the raw output, the natural grain that a lot of people now today talk about, I think the Z6 III's unbeatable value and unbeatable professional level output. I think all the conversation on the Z6 III's shadow quality not being good enough is just narrative building. And great, if you have narrative building, base it on something real. Don't base it on stupid things like that. For example, if I say today that the R6 II's dynamic range in video is not great because it doesn't have C-Log 2, it has C-Log 3. Why? That makes sense because genuinely Canon themselves say that I cannot apply C-Log 2 in a camera that does not, where the sensor does not allow for so much dynamic range. So it's a sensor limitation, which is why in those Canon cameras you do not see C-Log 2, you see C-Log 3. By the way, in Canon system, the C-Log 2 is a better log than C-Log 3. So don't go by the number. Nikon's weakness is that Nikon can potentially provide us with Nikon Log 2, which I hear they're working on. And I think this same Z6III is going to punch above its weight when it is powered with N-Log 2, which is a flatter profile, probably will unlock more dynamic range. Now, I think I've spoken enough on the video aspects. Let's talk about the photo aspects. I have, actually tested the Z6III and pitted that camera against the A9 II. And let me tell you, the A9 II's dynamic range does not match up to the dynamic range of the Z6III. So even in photodynamic range, the Z6III is quite good. But is it as good as, for example, the Z5II or the ZF or the Sony A7 IV? No, it is not. But what's the difference? The difference is that from ISO 100, where you have the richest dynamic range, to ISO 800, you will see about half a stop's difference in dynamic range. So you're talking about losing half a stop when the sensor is already performing at its best. Starting ISO 800, all these cameras from Sony, Panasonic, Canon and Nikon, they're all the same. So the compromise is intelligently not made when the compromise is going to really be felt, which is in really low light conditions when you have to push the ISO to, let's say, 1600 or 3200 ISO. There you don't have compromise. You have compromise when you have already a lot to play with, so it's not going to hit you badly. So all this conversation on dynamic range, whether on photo or video, is all cooked up narrative. Let me establish it to you better. The guy who kicked up the storm about all this was Tony Northrup. What does that guy talk about? Usually he says, if you want to buy an entry-level camera, buy the Canon R8. What is the Canon R8? It's essentially the R6II sensor, comes with a single shutter, not two shutters, which what you need for a proper shutter. The high shutter speed is not 1/8,000 of a second, but 1/4,000 of a second. It's a full frame camera. It is a tiny battery. It's got an even tinier viewfinder. It does not have stabilization. It does not have IBIS. And he said this is the best value camera ever. And he talked about that for the last 2 years. The Z5II has been out for the last 4 months, 3-4 months. Has he done a video on it? No. The Z5II kills the R8 in terms of value. The Canon folks come onto my channel and say, hey, you know what? R6II is a better camera than Z5II. Really? The R6II, which was launched at $2,500 is a better deal than the Z5II? And you have to come in and shout about that? That tells you where the problem is. The R6II is supposed to be a better camera than the Z5II. Unmistakably so. That's not a flaunt. Not at all. Mr. Tony is completely quiet on the Z5II front. Why? Why can't he accept the Z5II has fantastic image quality, great stabilization, fantastic build quality, so many customizable buttons, tremendous colors, and really good video quality? Why? And at such a great price. It launched at $1,700 but within 6 months it's going to come down to $1,500. Then what are you going to say? You're going to put the R6II on discount and match it to Z5II? That sounds like really bad days for Canon. So the point I'm making is, look at the people push this narrative. They clearly cannot accept if something is great on the Nikon front. And I don't like doing these kind of videos, and I kind of slightly trash someone, but in order for you to understand me, this is context. Let's talk about something else. Let's talk about IBIS. When the Lumix system launched the S1 II and the S1R2 and the S1 IIe, obviously especially for the S1 II, it's competing with the Z6III because it's using the same sensor, but they're far more expensive. Right now, it's almost about $800 to $1,000 more compared to the Z6III. So all the Lumix conversation has to somehow justify that it makes sense to buy an S1 II over the Nikon Z6III. So they need to justify. So any conversation on the Lumix S1 II has to show why the Nikon Z6III is not good enough. So what do they talk about? They talk about how Z6III's stabilization does not match with Panasonic's S1 II or S1R2 stabilization. Of course, it doesn't. Panasonic's stabilization has always been very good. There's no doubt about it. Is that the difference? Is that $1,000 worth of better stabilization? I don't think so. Look at the 1.8 lenses from Lumix and the 1.8S lenses from Nikon. They're very neck to neck in terms of price. But Nikon offers you Pro line f1.8. Lumix doesn't. So when I look at the Z6III, I also look at IBIS and I say, yeah, the IBIS is a bit behind the Lumix, for example. But you're paying about $1,000 more for that IBIS. What can you do with that? You can do so much. You can buy better lenses. You can buy a gimbal with that money. Also, remember, the best Lumix IBIS is enabled by cropping into the image. And when you crop into the image, you are losing information. You are losing dynamic range. So when you use that high-end stabilization, it does have a cost. You're not getting a cropless image that gives you gimbal-like footage. And then you're paying $1,000 extra for it. So yes, the Z5 II stabilization is not as good. But is it good enough for the money? That's the question. Is it filmic? Yes, it is. Switch on to sports mode. Don't stay on normal mode, when you're actually walking and using the Z6III's stabilization. It's going to give you very organic, handheld, beautiful. You have that touch of life to those footages. They don't look sterile. And if you want, almost mechanical level of stabilization, you got to use a gimbal. And that's also better and a professional way to use it, because when you do that, you don't crop into the image and you do not lose resolution and dynamic range. So if you're a pro, you have got to use a gimbal, no matter what brand of camera you're on. If you're just trying to sort of shoot it casually, then if you're shooting casually, why would you pay $3,200 for something that the Nikon offers at right now at $2,200? Does that make sense to you? If it does, congratulations. I'm going to see you soon with another one. Subscribe to the channel and help me reach 10,000 subscribers soon.